encounter, that's it. That was her daytime encounter. I had one with the kids. I suspect I had one with the kids, feeding the kids in the on the veranda. And what happened was my attention was drawn to something on the side. And the Aborigines had told me for a long time about the connection with these things and kids, and they're spot on.
What connection is that?
Well, that's another story. I'll get back to it a bit in a moment. But what happened with this was that my attention was drawn to something on the side, and I looked across to see a rather dense bush closing up, as if someone had parted it like that. All I caught was the bush going like this. That was another daytime one, but the best one was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, coming down here to set up the cameras, do some photography, and I heard what sounded to me like what I heard at night. Exactly the same sound. I thought, shit, this is the same thing. But what gave it away even better was all the little native wrens, and they in flocks of 100 or 50 to 100. And as I could hear the sound moving away from it, and I thought, gee, that sounds like it, the birds were taken off in line with the sound. I thought, there's definitely something there. Went quickly in that same direction, and the pace picked up. I thought, definitely him. And then it just thumping through the bush. I don't mean as in Skippy, I mean pounding, I should say. Through the bush, and we darted and weaved and that, and it dived straight in the bush. And as I came around the clearing in the swamp, once again, there's a great big bloody hole in the hakea, which I can't see here close by, but it's a very thorny bush, which is pretty nasty stuff. It had gone straight into it. So I walked up to the hole and carefully bent over and looked in the hole, and it growled at me.
So it was in the hole?
It was in the hole. It was in the bush. It was inside this huge, probably 10 metre by 10 metre square.
What's this growl sound like?
It just growled.
Just a couple.
And what happened then was I then climbed a scribbly gum tree, and it growled again, climbed down, went around the other side of the bush into the swamp, and stuck my head in the other way, and it turned and growled at me from the other way. And that was too much for me in the day.
What did this do to your belief system when you first... we believe, obviously, what you're saying.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't matter, I don't care anyway.
No, exactly. I understand it, because we've had some unusual experiences, but not in this sort of genre. But how does this fit with your belief system? When if you tried to tell people they've been watching TV and doing their mundane life, and you've been dealing with a 7-foot man-ape growling at you, and you're trying to corner it in the swamp, you must see it fairly humorously to some degree, wouldn't you? Or?
Well, that was... we did. We have reflected on occasions, particularly I over here, just joking about it. This guy has no idea what was happening at the time. You know? Yeah. I mean, and people coming out, as I said, people coming out and I said, Brownie or whatever it is, come inside, be a good dog. Hairy man, meanwhile, was running past their backyard. I mean, just incredible. We even did research, like with the guy over here. He was so blown away by it. 2 days later, he rang me up and said, I've done some research at the local historical society. I said, what did you come up with? He said, in 1908, the woman who owned a fair proportion of this land over here was a local magistrate's wife, and they grew fruit. And she referred to what she called old yellow eyes, because when she gave the outside toilet, she would frequently see these yellow eyes glowing out of the bush. Because she was in an influential position with her husband, being a magistrate, he then sent a mounted policeman to stay with her at night times. And apparently, this mounted policeman actually had chasers through the bush with it too.
And is he looking at journals? Is he have some sort of diary?
I have no idea. That was Gordon's work. The other thing Gordon came up to was reports of people in this area of the turn of the century frequently going down the roads with their horses. Horses would shy and refuse to proceed. That was another common one. Bloke across the road who I said hello to almost on a daily basis, if not twice per day, morning and afternoon, as he got his old Land Rover to go wherever his old guy was going to. 2 weeks after he died, I found out that he'd been living here for 50 years and knew all about him. So I had heard a story about this, hopped in the car one night, went round a local bowling club and just asked around if anyone of the mates of Roy. And they said, oh yeah, we're mates of Roy, you say about him dying, do you know him? And sat down and bought him a few beers, and they spent the whole night telling me the stories that Roy used to say about the hairy men and how he used to walk from his house on the far side of our block to the hamlet then of where we live, to go and buy supplies, and he used to say things like, if you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone, and stories like that. And he said things like they had particular tracks they follow, blah, blah, blah. So he confirmed a lot of stuff that I knew and the Aborigines had told me as well. So.
What are the Aborigines told you?
Okay, first time I had an encounter, we were quite scared about the whole thing, obviously. And being a teacher, I thought the best thing might be to ring up the Department of Education and talk to an Aboriginal consultant, which I did. He rang a bloke up and said to him, his name was Barry. I spoke to Barry and said, I've got a problem. He said, what is it? I said, well, I need some support from the Aboriginal community on this. I've got a yowie. And there was a pause, and then this guy burst in hysterical laughter on the end of the phone. And he said, what makes you think you've got a yowie? I said, because I've heard it and I've seen it. And he said, okay, what colour are the eyes? How fast does it run? What sound does it normally make when it's moving through the bush? What sounds does it make when it's going flat out? Well, I went through a whole lot. And having obviously passed the test, his next phrase was, I'll talk to the tribal elders tonight and I'll ring you back next day or two. Rang him back a day or two later, and he said the two tribal elders I spoke to or the half the tribal elders, I can't remember the number now, said you should turn all your lights on. The other half said you should turn all your lights off. As it turned out, I think they're both right, because what happens, light attracts them. To use an analogy like a moth, I suppose, you have a light, they come to see what it is, but at the same time it's a weapon. So I found, particularly in Nye, that the best weapon we could have was a torch. You shine its face, it's nocturnal, very sensitive to light, it does a runner. Because in the early days we used to carry tomahawks, things like that, because we were a bit scared down the back of our trousers, or at least I did, in case there's a problem. But torches seem to be a fairly good way of keeping it away. Next thing, a couple of months later, two tribal elders from the Aboriginal Land Council ring me up out of the blue, and they said, I believe you've got a problem with the dooliga. I said, yes, we've got a pretty bad one. And then the bloke I spoke to, Merv, then started describing our land without having been here. He said, how far... Oh, sorry, first question was, I assume you've only just recently moved in there. I said, yes. I said, it's a new block of land? Yes. I said, you just cleared it? Yes. When you built it, do you remember of any tracks on it? Yes. You said, do they intersect? Any of them particularly go through where your house now stands? I said, yes. Are there any there still now? I said, yes. He said, have you cleared? I said, yes. He said, okay, you've got a problem. And he said, this is important. He said, have you ever lost any children's clothing off the clothesline? I said, no, but I've found some. And he said, in the swamp? And I said, yes. He said, there you go, you've got a female. Second thing, he said, you've pissed it off.
Right.
The problem is in clearing the land, they're habitual. They have particular routes. They like being concealed. They don't like going in the open. If you clear, it pisses them off because they have to go around it. And that's what happened here. The old track is here, and the new track goes in around through the swamp and then back on the old track again. It goes around it. So that was the basic advice. But the thing that really scared us was some months after when John, a friend of mine who I worked with, his son had an experience 7 years earlier, had spent quite a few evenings around here listening to it walking